Hello, and welcome back to another episode of Critical Reactions with your host, Bryan. We're going to continue on with this week's theme of bands with misspelled names, looking at a band called Kreator, starting with a K rather than a C. The track we're looking at is Pleasure to Kill, which is quite a title right there. Let's dive into this and see what Kreator is bringing to the table. Well, that was a very fun drum fill. Very hollow toms, almost. Really digging in on the tension there with that held tremolo pick. I have a lot of thoughts about Thrash. Very interesting solos. Hitting that halftime groove.
Now that the mission is done, Bryan forgot his kills. I return to the cemetery.
Yeah, so those were the toms. What are these things?
My blood is still. A coffin is open for me.
Yeah, I mean, they could be toms too, but they're smaller toms, right?
Nothing will set me free. So I killed the death.
Okay. I think this is faster than the first time around.
It's not I want to see. Tasting the black from your lips as you die means satisfaction to me. Pleasure to kill.
Alright, I'm gonna rewind this back just to the beginning for a second. I want to check the tempo there, and then we'll get into analysis. Yep. When they came back to that moment after our bridge, about 10 BPMs faster. Um, which is going to tie into a lot of the stuff I want to talk about here. Um, Also, what is with thrash metal and misspelled names? We've had Megadeth, Vector, and now Kreator all during this week, and it is quickly becoming the thrash metal week. I think the only diversion from this was Catatonia on Tuesday, and whatever we get tomorrow. Um, it's it's kind of wild that it happened this way. It's not what I was expecting at all. I was hoping, as with most sort of grab bag styles of themes like this, that the musical consistency would not be consistent. We'd have a different style every track, and instead we've had thrash pretty consistently here. Just very interesting. It's like when we had Gotta Go Slow week last week, I think it was. And we ended up just on a doom kick, which makes sense given um it is one of the slower metals, and this is a mostly rock and metal oriented community. But it's still funny how it ended up that way. There's so much music out there that's slow, and we just got doom metal pretty much exclusively. So I want to talk about Kreator here, which is probably why you guys are here, why you want me, what you want me to talk about. We just listen to it, dig into it. This is thrash metal, pretty typical thrash metal. Um, there is very little in the way of melodic ideas. It's actually quite distant from yesterday's Vector, which was thrashy in its intensity and speed, but more melodic in its writing with actually just the use of melody within its riffage. This one is pretty much riffs from start to finish. Um, it's about getting that texture, that rule of cool, the gritty, awesome sounding guitar riffs, and the speed and intensity of all that, and just cramming a 7 minute song into 4 minutes. Quite the opposite of oh my god, we had Gotta Go Slow week and then Thrash week. Uh, I can't plan this stuff any better. Um, And so the song, though, basically goes between two ideas, kind of three if you want to break up the bridge in half. We have our verse, chorus, which is very tightly connected in the style of music it is. There's basically one 4 bar riff for our verse and one 4 bar riff for our chorus, and just alternate those two ideas. Then we get into a solo section, which continues on with the thrash foundational ideas, and we get a left guitar solo and a right guitar solo. I'm assuming there's two guitarists in the band. Then we get a halftime feel bridge section that kind of introduces some melodic moments, but I think is mostly there just as a breather before we return to form with bringing back in another verse and chorus. This time a little faster. Um, and through that lens, I feel this is just pretty iterative. That's going to be weird to say. I'm going to say iterative thrash metal, but given that I know Kreator is an older band, I don't have information here. 86. So this might not be iterative, this might be one of the original bands, but regardless, what I'm saying is this is very typical. Whether they were fresh at the time or not, this is the very generic thrash metal sound today, at least. Um, so I don't really see anything here that stands out to me, but that doesn't mean that it's bad. Again, it could be iterative, or they could have been the first on the block, kind of setting a stage for it. I don't know where Kreator sits in the history of it all. It could just be retrospectively that it feels pretty typical, but again, at the time, maybe it wasn't. The thing is, though, is like I said, retrospectively, this is just some really solid thrash metal. Nothing in here really stands out. Lots of tremolo picking, lots of pedal tones that are accented with a little lick or accented with isolated beats in even some cases, um, with a halftime feel in the middle to contrast so that we can pick back up the speed and make it feel faster, even though in this case it actually does get faster. Um, the vocals are very rough, they're very aggressive. It's more, once again, about the texture of it than about hitting notes, very much in line with how the instruments are composed. And from that angle, it is a whiplash time. It is just constant driving force throughout 80% of the track. You're either ready for the ride or you're not. Um, and there's definitely a joy that comes out of that, even in we talked earlier this week with Megadeth just being such an iconic band and having so many legendary riffs in that track, Holy Wars. Um, Even when you don't have legendary riffs like that and you do a thrash metal song like this, there's still a lot of thrill in just the raw intensity and speed of it. So I don't want to detract anything by saying that it feels standard or typical to my ears. Um, but it does. There's nothing in here that really stands out to me as pushing the boundaries, but I'm also coming at it backwards. I did not pick up on thrash when it came out. This song came out 2 years before I was born, so there's absolutely no way I could have heard it in context regardless. But most of my thrash understanding is of later works, so I don't have that foundation to accurately portray whether this was groundbreaking or not. I feel like I've gone on this a little bit too long though. Um, Emotionally, I don't really catch anything with here other than just relentlessness, speed, intensity. It's just kind of got that rule of cool feel to the riffage. I don't really get any emotion out of that other than just that metal aggression or metal edge, like I was talking about yesterday. But I don't really associate an emotion with that usually because metal kind of has an aggressive sound, but I don't typically find metal to have aggressive emotions unless the vocals are digging into that or the guitar tones are really a bit more sharper than they typically are, a bit more pointed, or maybe the lyrics are aggressive. But just music, well, lyrics aren't part of the music as far as first time listening for me in my case. Lyrics are very important to the art, but they're not part of the music. It's like a separate entity to the notes that are being played. Um, so yeah, I don't find anything aggressive about the music, but it is an aggressive tone. If that makes sense, I hope that makes sense. So because of that, I don't really have much of an emotional resonance with this. All I get is the blistering speed out of it, and that's the only connection I really have with the tracks. And anything that's really telling me about, other than our halftime feel, which could be, um, when you're just running on fumes. Maybe you've only had 4 hours of sleep, uh, or what have you, and you're just you're so tired, and you just keep going, right? If you stop, you're gonna fall asleep or whatever, and then when you do stop, and like you realize everything's finally catching up to you. And your brain's beginning to process what's happened in the last 76 hours of your life that you kind of just been mindlessly going through on autopilot, and things catch up to you and you're like, oh man, you have like this moment of realization and maybe you got a flood of emotions and like things are starting to connect. That's kind of what I feel there. We're moving at such a blistering pace, we don't really have time to connect with anything, and that halftime feeling is a moment of reconnecting with the events of the rest of the song. It could indicate a moment of clarity. It could indicate a moment of introspection. I don't know. We'll get there when we get to the lyrics, but that's really the only emotional connection I have here is speed and then slowing it down for a breather. And the music even there kind of has a bit of I don't know, like a feeling of connection there. It's not really pensive. It's not really interconnected. It just feels a bit more something. I don't even know what the emotion is, but everything else is sort of just a dispassionate speed, a disconnected acceleration, if you have. So that's kind of the story that the music has told me. Before we get into the lyrics, which is literally right around the corner, this is not a lot to talk about on this track. Something super interesting here. Kreator actually came up in the comments of Megadeth. Um, and I don't remember who it was. I wish I could give you the shout out on this because this is a really informative comment. Um, thrash metal had two, maybe more branches, but at least two branches. There was the American thrash metal scene and the German thrash metal scene. And it was explained to me that the American thrash metal scene was a bit tighter, and that's where we get bands like Megadeth in the picture, versus the German thrash metal scene, which was a bit looser in the performance. And they both kind of gave way to different other branches of metal, where um, the U.S. What is this? Thrash metal gave way to death and technical death, continuing on with the idea of playing really tightly, whereas German thrash metal, with a bit more of its looseness in its performance, gave way to black metal. And this is really interesting because Kreator was the band that came up as the showcase of a German thrash metal band that helped uh, carved the way for what would become black metal. Um, and that's not to say that Kreator is affiliated with black metal. I don't know what the rest of their discography looks like, but just that German thrash metal as a whole, with Kreator representing that genre. Maybe they were a big name, maybe they were one of the first bands. I don't know why they were specifically picked, but German thrash metal led into the creation of black metal, from what I understand. Um, but the idea here is that German thrash metal was affiliated with looseness in playing, and it's one of the first things that popped up in this song for me. Um, the tremolo picking, the really fast drumming, even the vocal fast syllabic performance, just saying all these words as quickly as they can. There's many sections of this track where they just are not in time with each other. They're out of sync just slightly. It almost feels like they're all pushing the boundaries of their own human physical limits. And instead of saying, okay, we're going to play 16th notes at 140 BPMs, they're saying, all right, I'm playing this fast, keep up with me. And sometimes they do, and sometimes they don't, and sometimes somebody speeds up over them, and it's a very loose style of um, shred of quick playing that actually, I think retrospectively, this is what I think of when I think of thrash. It was only recently that I begun to understand that early Metallica, um, whatever the first album was called, and early Megadeth are thrash metal. I never really thought of them as thrash. And again, like I've mentioned a few times this week, I just don't have a lot of experience with thrash, which is probably why. This is what I think of, though. I think of very loose playing, of people really pushing their limits, and just making a lot of noise, with the distortion helping to cover up all the imperfections in the performance. This is what I think of, which is not a very it's not a very good look for me, I guess. I kind of look down on this type of speed metal, but it is kind of what I associated with the genre. Faster playing metal was about just being sloppy. Um, and I talk about this at times, that imperfection can add to a song. There are some tracks that I want to be perfect. When I look at tech death bands, I really want that raw mechanical precision. That is what I want out of that. That's why I'm listening to it. Same with classical music. I'm not looking for any flubs in that. If you're part of a big symphony, a big orchestra, I'm assuming you got there on skill, and while there is going to be human imperfection in any performance, nothing can ever be perfect. I'm really looking for something close to that perfection. And then there's other bands like indie rock where imperfection gives it extra characteristic, makes it unique. It's really, I don't have any hard and fast rules for it. I don't. It's just when I listen to a song and I'm like, and I hear an imperfection, I'm like, oh, that actually works well for it. It amplifies what's going on. And other times I'm like, that's kind of rough around the edges. And this I feel is a little rough. I'm sure some people are going to enjoy it. I'm not saying that it's wrong, but I do enjoy the tighter performance of bands like Megadeth when they're playing at speeds like this. Um, but I don't think most of it really doesn't matter, right? It's playing so fast that if you're, an eighth of a beat behind or ahead, it really doesn't matter because the notes are coming so fast. You really have to be paying inordinately. Nope, that's not the word I want. What is that word I want? Inordinate. Nope, you have to be paying an insane amount of attention. I'm just going to skip over that word to the rhythmic timing of them to really hear it. All right, so it's not something that I think is detracting or distracting from the music in most cases. However, when we get to the solo section, it is very, very alarming. I could, I don't know if I physically showed anything during the solo sections. All I remember is thinking in my brain, imagining the guitars, because I don't know what these people look like, but I'm imagining the guitars and hands and like disembodied hands, I suppose, just kind of floating there, VR style. And just like the sloppiness of the playing, it just completely took me out of the moment. Not to mention that there is almost zero attention paid towards chords. And again, when you're playing at that speed, as I've mentioned many times before, when you're going to play accidentals, which is just the musical term for notes outside of the key that you're in, and a key is just a group of notes that the group of notes that you're allowed to play to get the specific sound you're aiming for. If you're going to include accidentals, a lot of jazz soloists will utilize them sparingly and quickly because the faster you get off the note, the less dissonance that you're going to have with it. You can get the spiciness of the tone without including the dissonance by just getting off it quickly and not allowing it to resonate. That same principle is applied here. You just play as fast as you can and you play wrong notes and no one's really going to notice. Not to mention the fact that we don't have hard chords underlying these solos. We have more fast playing. So, and we have more fast playing of like a total of 3 or 4 notes total. So we're not even looking at a full scale. We're looking at a 4 or 5 note scale, which gives a lot of extra room to play wrong notes, so to speak. So the end result is that it doesn't sound bad, but if you have an understanding or if you have the ear training for this, you can hear that there's just so many notes that don't fit. They're not wrong. They don't introduce dissonance, but they're not in line with any of the other notes that have been played throughout the song. And it's sort of random. It isn't like they're purposefully placed. It isn't like we're utilizing chromaticism to include every note and we're rising a cyclical idea up half steps. It's just it almost feels like they're just hitting whatever notes on the fret that they want and it sounds fine, so they roll with it, but it sounds fine because of obfuscation, which isn't a bad thing at all. I really don't want this to sound like I'm trashing them or anything like that. As I mentioned, for 99% of people, I don't even think this is going to be something that pops up in their ear. They're going to hear it and it's going to be fine for them. So it's not bad. And we've talked about things before, like these are all tools in a toolbox. You can utilize dissonance and notes outside of the key for great effect. There's never going to be a time where I tell you you can't do this. There are no rules in music about how to make it. But at least for me, this whole solo section, both of them really take me out of the moment because they feel so distant from the rest of the track. They don't follow the rhythm, they don't follow the tempo, they don't follow the chord progression, they don't follow the key. They just are. It's just a spamming of notes. It's just play whatever your fingers can hit as fast as you can. And maybe there is thought to it that I just can't see. Maybe every note is specifically intentional, but I don't see it that way. And I usually try my best to give bands the benefit of the doubt and say that, whatever sounds weird to me was intentional. They were aiming for something, for an artistic or thematic reason, that they wanted to utilize this sound to help tell the story. And I'm really trying my hardest here, but I don't hear anything here that would support that. And the sloppiness in the performance throughout the rest of the track, while still in key in all of those sections, is still sloppy rhythmically, and it just it doesn't support the idea that those solos are intentionally played with this sort of even a microtonality vibe to them. It just really took me out of it. Um, but the thing is, and where I want to take this next is to say that it's not bad. It's not wrong. I'm not saying they can't do this or they shouldn't have done it. This band is huge. This song was liked enough to be requested for me to check out. So, like I said, most people aren't even going to pick up on most of this. But if you took the distortion off the guitars here and had them play it like that, I don't think a lot of people would enjoy it. It really is utilizing the production, the guitar tones, and the engineering to hide the imperfections beneath just a really cool exterior. And it works. I'm not going to ever say don't do that. I utilize production tricks when I can to cover up areas that maybe I'm not so great at doing. Or performing. It's not a bad thing at all. I will 100% support utilizing production to cover up for skill in performance, because production itself is another skill. I don't see them as separate ideas, even though they are two very different skills and they typically require two different people. But um, it's just what I heard. So with that said, like I said, that was kind of my biggest issue. Let's move into the lyrics here and see what's going on. Day turns to night as I rise from my grave. Black was the hole where I laid, stalking the city to seek out your blood. I love when it showers from my blade. Interesting. We have an AABA? No, I don't think blood is going to get rhymed. Interesting. We have grave, laid, and blade, a rhyme at the end of lines 1, 3, and 4. Or 1, 2, and 4. Your body is so pretty, but how will it look when my perverted lust is stilled? No one to save you, no parents or friends, because they've all got killed. AABACDED? Interesting rhyming scheme. Very interesting rhyming scheme. Anyways, I think this is, it's pretty straightforward. We have somebody who enjoys hurting people and also has not even just hurting, but power over people, I think. There's definitely pain that is in there. Wants to see those cities soaked in blood. Loves when it showers, presumably blood from his blade. But there's also sexual power in there. It says he has a perverted lust. The chorus says, my only aim is to take many lives, the more the better I feel. My only pleasure is to hear many cries from those tortured by my steel. The color of your blood from your open body is all I want to see. Tasting the blood from your lips as you die means satisfaction to me. Pleasure to kill. Yeah. Yeah, we have somebody who just enjoys the power trip. They want to hurt people. Pretty straightforward so far. Hear my heartbeat as you see me upon you. Tears in your eyes, I do not care. Listen now to the motor of my chainsaw. Open your eyes, don't be scared. Look into my eyes, do you see any love? The only thing is agony. Now I can't wait to give you the good pain. Die now and be free. We go back to the chorus. We hit the bridge, and this was what I mentioned was the moment for things to catch up. We slowed down a little bit, and I was thinking maybe a moment of introspection here, or just reconnecting with the emotions or understanding what happened in the rest of the song. So let's see if there's any. I don't think so. Well, let's see if there's any regret here. Now that my mission is done, your body forgotten has been killed. I return to the cemetery and my bloodlust is stilled. My coffin is open for me. I lay down and rest. Nothing will set me free, and so I kill until excess. Yeah, there's no regret there. But as dark as this sounds, there is rest at the end of a day's of work. And being that we mentioned a coffin, I must have missed this back at the beginning. Day turns to night as I rise from my grave. So I think we're talking about a vampire here, which makes sense because it's not just about the pain, but there's also, tasting the blood. Yeah, it says tasting your blood, so there's blood consumption in here. I think there is a vampiric kind of edge. So we have a vampire who likes to hurt people and goes out at night to do so and returns to sleep during the day. Because after the bridge, we return to verse 1 and chorus. We just repeat all that again. So yeah, I think that's pretty straightforward. And I'd say a whirlwind of a song and the murderous rampage kind of go hand in hand there. I'm sure there's, I mean, especially since the bridge says nothing will set me free, so there's an insatiable bloodlust within this person. Um, I'm sure there's probably a kind of high that goes on with the murder. So yeah, I'd say just pairing that with the whirlwind speed of Thrash, it works. There's a synergy there. I'm not gonna say it's a super strong thematic connection between the two, but there's a strong synergy there. I can see the two pairing well, and bringing it down to halftime for the bridge. I think works well because not only do we have this idea of resting, right, returning to the coffin, um, but there is also not introspection, but a moment to peer into our narrator's mind. Because everything else is just about what they do. They go out at night, they stalk people, they kill them, they drink their blood. But the bridge, we actually get an insight into why all this happens. I return to the cemetery, my bloodlust is stilled, but nothing will set me free, so I kill until excess. It explains the predicament of our narrator, why they do the things they do, and how long this will last. We get a little bit of insight into them as a character, which is not anything that we get throughout the rest of it. We get to see character traits, but we don't get to see their reasonings and their motivations. So it is a bit introspective, not for the character, but for the audience to see into the character themselves, which makes sense. So yeah, it actually works really well with the way that they've timed everything with the track. All right, so those are my thoughts on Kreator's Pleasure to Kill. A bit more negative than I typically like to do with my reactions, but it's kind of a big part of a not a very deep song. There's two riffs, two solos, and a third. Well, there's a third riff for the bridge when we hit that halftime groovy feel, which was actually really nice. I dug that. So yeah, three riffs and two solos. Not a lot to go. Oh, I forgot to talk about those toms. Not really anything to add, but I did want to point them out. I do think that the drummer is utilizing high toms and a combination of those with the low toms and a floor tom to get those really nice, punchy, high hits out of the drum kit. They started off the track with them. It was a really phenomenal. It kind of pulled me out of there. I was like, wow, that's nice. You don't hear those too often. Usually we have toms that are under the snare pitch wise, but toms above them do exist. They just, I feel like they don't get utilized as much. Maybe they're just not EQ'd as high as these were, because these were very predominant in the mix. There's no way you could miss them. But at least to me, it was a nice break, an extra timbre that I don't typically hear in metal music. I would not mind hearing more bands utilizing them. And, wood blocks and all sorts of stuff. There's so much good percussion that could fit on a kit. I'm sure there's all sorts of mounts and stuff for all this stuff, and they just don't get utilized very often. So that's a bit of a shame, but yeah, it is what it is. All right. Those are my thoughts. Creators, pleasure to kill this where you guys come in. Hit me up with your comments. Let me know if you enjoyed this or not. Anything that stood out to you. Anything you'd like to add on or correct me on, or tell me I'm wrong about any criticisms I had of this track. Um, Feel free to let me know in the comments section. Above the comments is a description box, and there's a link for Linktree. It takes you to this menu right here. You can support the channel in a variety of ways. You can submit your own special selections, get some merch, support the channel directly to Patreon, and get some perks like voting on future themes and songs. You can also find all the social medias around the channel, Discord and Twitter, and there's some other stuff in there like my own personal music and in my email if you ever wanted to chat with me outside of, well, the comment section, which honestly is not a fantastic way to communicate with people. Above that, if you could, like, subscribe, and ring the bell. I greatly appreciate all three of those. All right, we have a special selection coming up next. Otherwise, I'll be back tomorrow, 5 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, 9 p.m. UTC. Until next time, remember to be critical, not cynical, of the music you listen to, and have a fantastic morning, afternoon, or evening whenever you choose to watch my videos.